I know what she did. Mom bakes the pie on purpose. She cracks the oven, let the cinnamon sugar smell crawl under our door like a cruel finger, then slammed it shut. Smell it, children. That's all you get. She laughed. Dad laughed. We licked the air like starving dogs. I'm hiding this diary deep under the mattress so someone might find it someday if we don't survive. Tomorrow I break the window. I will eat that pie, or die running.
In the dead of night, on a quiet street in Paris, California, a 17-year-old girl clutched a stolen cell phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed 911. Her name was Jordan Turpin, and her desperate voice would soon shatter a facade, one that hid one of the most horrific cases of abuse in modern history. Inside a seemingly ordinary suburban home, 13 siblings, aged just 2 to 29, were prisoners, starved, chained, and tortured by the very people meant to protect them. Their parents, David and Louise Turpin. This is not just a story of cruelty, it's a story of betrayal so profound. It defies comprehension, of innocence crushed under sadistic control. This is the story of the Turpin family, a tale that began with a lie and ended with a fight for freedom. To the outside world, David and Louise Turpin were the picture of a perfect American family. But behind those smiling faces hid a secret so monstrous it would one day shock the world. David worked as a computer engineer, quiet, disciplined, respected by colleagues. Louise stayed home, a devoted mother of 13, always speaking proudly of her gifted children. Together, they played the role of devout Christians, raising their large family in what seemed like love and faith. On social media, their life looked almost magical. Disneyland trips, matching dresses, family portraits under golden lights. They even renewed their wedding vows in an Elvis-themed chapel, laughing in sparkling costumes and holding hands like newlyweds. To anyone watching online, they seemed like a family built on joy. But it was all a performance. Every post, every picture, a carefully crafted illusion, a mask hiding years of terror. Behind closed curtains, the 13 children weren't homeschooled. They were imprisoned. They weren't loved. They were controlled. Neighbors saw them rarely. The kids never waved, never played outside. And when they did appear, their eyes looked hollow, as if something deep inside them had already given up. Yet no one suspected. No one asked questions. No one knocked on that door. Because from the outside, everything looked perfect. The Turpins' betrayal began long before the world ever heard their name. Each move, from Texas to California, brought them deeper into isolation. Every relocation tightened the walls around their children. They said they were protecting their kids from a dangerous world, but in truth, they were building a prison of their own making. The Turpin residence, hidden behind drawn curtains and locked doors, was a place where cruelty ruled every hour of every day. For years, 13 children, from a toddler barely learning to walk to young adults in their 20s, lived in filth, fear, and hunger. Investigators would later call it a house of horrors. Trash covered the floors, the stench of urine and rot hung in the air. Food sat untouched on the counter, pies, fruit, leftovers, not for the children, but for their tormentors. The siblings were allowed just one meal a day, sometimes less. They starved until their bones pressed against their skin, their bodies shrinking with each passing year. Many were so malnourished that even in their 20s, they looked like small children. Hygiene was a privilege, not a right. Baths were forbidden for months at a time. Their clothes were filthy, their hair matted. The smell of the house was so strong, officers later said, it clung to their uniforms long after they left. But the worst part was the chains. Padlocks and shackles fastened to beds, cold metal biting into wrists and ankles. Children were chained for weeks as punishment, sometimes for stealing food, sometimes for simply speaking without permission. The rules were endless, impossible. They were told when to eat, when to sleep, when to speak, and often they weren't allowed to do any of it. David and Louise called it discipline, but what they really wanted was control. Louise mocked her children when they cried for food. She'd place apple pie on the counter, letting the scent fill the room, and laugh as they begged for a bite. "You don't deserve it," she'd say. The older siblings tried to comfort the younger ones, whispering through walls in the dark. But even whispering was dangerous. Any sound could bring punishment. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. And with every passing moment, the Turpin children began to lose hope that anyone would ever find them. They lived unseen, unheard, trapped in a house that was supposed to keep them safe, but instead became their cage. Sometimes, even in the darkest places, the human spirit finds a way to whisper. One of the older girls, Jordan, began secretly writing. Her diary wasn't written in books or journals. Sometimes it was scribbled on torn paper, hidden beneath mattresses or inside worn clothes. Each word was a quiet act of rebellion, a record of pain, and a fragile spark of faith. She wrote about the hunger that never ended, about the smell that clung to their skin, about the sound of chains scraping the floor when someone moved in their sleep. But she also wrote about dreams, of sunlight, of grass, of laughter, dreams she'd never truly lived, but somehow still believed in. The siblings had each other, their only comfort in a world without love. At night, when their parents slept, the older ones would whisper to the younger, stories of a world outside, where children could play and eat when they were hungry. The little ones listened, wide-eyed, their faces pale in the dim light, clinging to those stories like lifelines. Sometimes, when the pain became too much, they would hum softly to each other through the walls, not songs of joy, but of survival. Tiny voices, trembling but unbroken. In one of her secret notes, Jordan wrote that she wanted to be free like the people on TV. She had seen glimpses of the outside world in stolen moments. On a screen her parents forgot to unplug. Music videos, laughter, freedom, things that felt like another universe. Slowly, that dream turned into a plan. Jordan began talking in hushed whispers with one of her sisters, planning something that, for them, was almost impossible. Escape. They didn't know if they'd survive. They didn't know what waited outside, but they knew one thing. If they stayed, they would die. And so, the diary entries turned from words of pain into a blueprint of courage, a promise that one night, one of them would break the chains. For all of them. That night was coming soon. And when it came, the world would finally hear their voices. It was a cold night in January 2018. Inside the Turpin house, silence ruled, as it always did. The parents were asleep, and 13 children lay trapped in the stench of that broken world. But that night, something changed. One of them, 17-year-old Jordan Turpin, clutched an old cell phone she had found hidden in the house. Her hands were trembling, her heart racing so fast it almost hurt. She had spent 2 years planning this moment, studying how to open the door quietly, how to walk without waking anyone. She didn't know what freedom felt like, but she was ready to die trying to find out. Slowly, she crept through the darkness, past her chained siblings, past the creaking stairs that had betrayed her before. Every step was a prayer, every breath a battle between fear and courage. She slipped through a small side door and stepped into the night. For the first time in her life, she was outside. The real outside. The air was cold and sharp, the sky endless. She had escaped, but she wasn't safe. Not yet. Clutching the phone, she ran down the street barefoot, her hair wild, her heart pounding. She dialed 911, her voice trembling, but steady enough to change everything. "Hi. I just ran away from home. My parents are abusive. My sisters and brothers are chained up. At home." The operator tried to understand. Her voice was weak, uncertain. She didn't even know her address. She had never been outside long enough to learn it. But within minutes, police cars flooded the quiet suburban street of Muir Woods Road, Paris, California. Officers followed Jordan back to the house, and what they found inside would haunt them forever. Chains, filth, children starved, pale, terrified, the smell of decay, and eyes, wide, blinking in disbelief that help had finally come. The world had just witnessed the unthinkable, a modern-day house of horrors, and a girl brave enough to break the silence. When the story broke, the world froze in disbelief. Behind the doors of a suburban home, a nightmare had unfolded for over 2 decades. David and Louise Turpin were arrested that same night, charged with torture, false imprisonment, and child cruelty. Their faces, once smiling in family Christmas cards, now stared blankly in mugshots that chilled the nation. Court documents revealed what investigators called one of the worst cases of child abuse in modern history. Years of starvation, chains, psychological torment. The medical reports painted an unthinkable picture. Bones fragile from malnutrition, bruises old and new, and stunted growth that made adults look like children. The Turpins' carefully crafted image, a devout Christian family, homeschooling their kids in faith, was nothing but a grotesque lie. Their betrayal wasn't just against their children, it was against everyone who ever believed in them. In 2019, both David and Louise pleaded guilty to 14 felony counts each, including torture and dependent adult abuse. The sentence, life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. During the trial, the siblings faced them, not as victims, but as survivors. One said softly, "I was in a cage, but now I'm free." Another, trembling, spoke of forgiveness, of healing, of the pain of being unloved by those who should have protected them. Their voices broke the silence that had defined their lives. The nightmare was over, but the scars would remain. The Turpin story doesn't end in chains. For the 13 siblings, freedom was only the beginning, the start of a long, painful road to healing. After their rescue, they were placed in foster care and group homes. For the first time, they could eat full meals, shower every day, and feel the warmth of sunlight on their skin. Things most of us take for granted, for them, felt like miracles. They began learning to read and write, to trust others, to laugh without fear. Some enrolled in community college or vocational programs. Others found joy in music, painting, and writing, rediscovering the creativity their parents had tried to crush. Jordan, the brave voice who made that 911 call, and her sister Jennifer have since spoken publicly about their journey, raising awareness about abuse and inspiring others to speak up. But healing isn't simple. Some of the siblings faced new struggles in foster care, reports of neglect surfacing in a system that was supposed to protect them. Trauma doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers, whispering from the past. Yet through everything, their bond remains unbreakable. They celebrate birthdays, graduations, and first jobs, moments that once seemed impossible. The Turpin siblings are more than survivors. They are proof that even after years of darkness, the human spirit can rise again. Jordan's 911 call wasn't just a plea for help. It was a declaration of freedom, a spark that lit the path for 13 souls to reclaim their lives.